Hello, Tiger Tamers. I'm Lupine Fiasco. This is Daily Fab Gameplay, and today I am going to give you a review of my Nationals experience, as well as the week of testing leading up to that. As you know, this last weekend was Nationals and Calling Weekend in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Calling recap will come tomorrow, as I really don't want to talk to you for an hour straight, and the Calling went a lot better for me than Nationals did, so I think it warrants its own video where maybe we talk about some of the things that went different than Nationals itself. But before I start any of that, I want to give a special shout out to new patrons JM and Kenny Calamari, who have not been on the roll of patrons for the last couple days. Those videos were pre-recorded before JM or Kenny joined. You'll see them in this video and in every video moving forward, so I just want to give that shout out to them to compensate for not having followed the promise that I lay out for all of my patrons at Mounting Anger or above. So what was the last week like for me? It started with a week of testing, a few days of testing in Las Vegas with Team Metal Fab tokens. I flew from Sacramento, where I'm based, to Las Vegas to test with Eric, Peter, Majin, Austin, and then some of our friends. France and Kyle were at the event as well. And the point of testing for 3 days leading up to Nationals was kind of to jumpstart all of us in Classic Constructed. We've all been playing regularly for months leading up to Nationals. No one has really slacked off since qualifying through RTN, but this was a few days for us to really get back up to speed with the meta, playing against new Enigma, Zen, testing some ideas, throwing things at the wall just to see what sticks. So for my part, my few days leading up to Nationals was a lot of Kayo versus Enigma, a lot of Kayo versus New, a bit of Kayo versus Zen, and then the majority of our time going to drafting. As you may have all heard, historically Kano players are bad at draft, and with two of the best players on our team, Majin and Peter, being dedicated Kano mains, we needed to make sure that they could overcome stereotypes and really succeed in a world that just doesn't look kindly upon Kano players in draft. And overall, I think everyone succeeded. Majin and Peter, certainly two of the best drafters to come out of our week of prep. For my part, I came out of it with a crippling fear of playing KO and really just dooming on him going into the Nationals meta. We've got the day one meta breakdown here. KO was a lot more represented than I thought he would be. I thought going into Nationals that Zen was pretty clearly the best deck, certainly the best aggro deck, and the only reason I wasn't on Zen is that I was not confident in my ability to learn a new hero in 2 weeks. I thought KO is my comfort pick rather than try to get 100 reps over 2 weeks on Zen. Let's just hunker down on KO, try to learn 3 new matchups, and hope that my level of familiarity with the deck can get me some wins. And in the initial days of testing, it seemed like that might be the case. I was winning against Enigma very consistently. I think in 10 games, I dropped 1 of them. New was closer to 50-50 than I thought it would be. If you've been watching my channel over the last few weeks, you know that I have been absolutely tearing New apart with the simple strategy of not blocking. And our New, piloted by Kyle, was getting very good results, anywhere from 50-50 to even slightly favored. And the few games I got against Zen were not at all encouraging. I had been testing Strength Rules All as the hate piece for Zen, as well as Azalea, and even New was trying it against New and really wasn't satisfied with it. My thought was that I don't want to go up to 9 generics. I already have CNC and E-Strike. The weakest link is the best piece of hate that I could play for Zen, while also having utility against Prism, Kayo, and Levia. But that's so many misses for Blood Rush turns, and if my Blood Rush Bellow is getting 2 points of value because my turn looks like E-Strike, Go Again, Mandible Claw, the weakest link, that's a terrible Blood Rush turn. So I thought Strength Rules All is Brute. It's going to be a 2 for 8 under Blood Rush. If Zen is arsenaling his Descendant Gust Wave or his Crouching Tiger or maybe even Bonds of Ancestry, I'm going to get a block, maybe even 2 blocks. Maybe it does something to stop Zen's turn, but found that I either wasn't drawing it at the correct time, or when I did draw and play it, I was flipping up an Art of War or an Ancestral Harmony. So feeling very bad about the KO Zen matchup. I got testing against France's Azalea and went probably 1-8 overall. Felt terrible about the Azalea matchup. My thought about that one is if Azalea flips up Skullbone Crosswrap at the start of the game, I'm maybe 50-50. I can get there with a good power spike. If Azalea stumbles a bit, then I can win with a well-timed Savage Sash Blood Rush turn. And if Azalea flips up Balance of Justice, I lose 20% in the matchup because she can block better. She is going to draw an extra card on my Blood Rush turn. It's very unlikely that I'm going to force her to block anything. So if she gets to play a 5 or even 6 card hand as the crackback to my Blood Rush, I'm probably dead, unless I can kill her. And if she is chaining Disruption ahead of my Blood Rush turn, then it is unlikely that I put her into lethal range before the Blood Rush. So overall, just feeling horrendous about my chances in CC. Now my chances in draft, I was actually feeling kind of okay. I felt like I was getting consistent 2-1s with the occasional 3-0 thrown in my first or second draft of the day. Once we hit 3rd and 4th, I really started to taper off on those results. But the layout of Nationals is that we play 4 rounds of CC and then 3 rounds of draft. If I am consistently 3-0ing or 2-1ing my first draft of the day, it really doesn't matter what happens in anything after that. All that matters is what happens in that first draft. So I felt like, okay, if we can 2-2 CC and we can 2-1 draft, then we make day 2 of Nationals. At that point, maybe I drop, I go play the Calling, and I feel like I did it. I am a day 2 Nationals competitor. And that was going to be satisfying enough for me. So, hanging out at the team house, while not great for my mental game, while maybe all reps are good reps, but not exactly encouraging for my actual flesh and blood game, it was just overall a lot of fun. Team Metal Fab Tokens has a lot of really solid players and a lot of really good guys on it. Everyone was fun to hang out with. We were kicking back, we were drinking, we were going out to eat. It was just a good time, very cool social experience, and I'm really glad I went. I'm really glad I got to spend time with everyone, because there are some guys on the team that I just don't get to spend a lot of time with. Eric lives in Vegas. France and Kyle live in California, but they are far enough away from me that I'm not seeing them at local events. So overall, it was just a very cool thing to be able to do, and I'm happy to be on a team that is putting these team houses together ahead of events for some last minute practice. Everyone is doing their best to help people out. Austin gave me some tips about the new matchup. Eric was walking me through the Enigma matchup. We got the team Enigma list to a place where it was significantly better against Brute than it had been previously. I had said that I was winning 9 games out of 10 against Enigma at the start of the week, and by the end of the week, I was losing more than half of my games because we were able to make those tweaks and get Eric and Austin their experience in the matchup such that Austin beat 3 Brutes on day 1 of Nats, and I like to think that I was able to help with that by providing a KO deck played competently. So that takes us through the testing house, everyone feeling confident in their draft, moderate levels of confidence in CC. And we get to Nationals starting on Friday. Show up at the venue. Everyone sits down for their first round of Classic Constructed. I, of course, am still on Kayo. Despite dooming about him, if I didn't feel confident in my ability to learn a new hero in 2 weeks, I definitely didn't feel confident in my ability to learn it in 2 days. So we are just locking in Kayo. We're going to hope for the best. And immediately I'm surprised to see how many other Kayos are sitting around me because, like I said, I think Zen is easily the best aggro deck in the format, if not the best deck overall. At this point, I think Zen is the best deck, period. But at least at the time, thought he was the best aggro deck, just based on numbers alone. So I was surprised to see so many KOs around me. And I know that KO did very well in Nationals, getting a second place finish. So I think the deck definitely has legs, definitely can thrive in this environment. But I do think that the Zen matchup is atrocious, and I was discouraged when my first round of my first Nationals was against Zen, and shockingly this one turned into a win. So I won the die roll, I chose to go second, and in talking to my opponent about that decision, they made an interesting point, which was that they wanted me to go second because they thought that Zen is so favored that the only way KO can win is to spike a turn 1 cast bones or agile windup discard or do both and set up a 5-card hand and really just high roll Zen, and that the disadvantage of going first in an aggro mirror is it outweighs the advantage that, or is outweighed by the advantage that Zen has in the matchup. That Zen is so favored, he can give up points by going first just to make sure that KO doesn't high roll. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this. I think that Zen has some advantages by going first. Zen gets to set a 5th card in the arsenal. Zen has the potential to transcend on turn 1. But I do still think that KO wants to be going second because KO then gets the opportunity to discard a windup on turn 0. But more than that, KO gets the ability to send the first real damage that Zen cannot easily block. At the same time, if we're talking about Zen transcending on turn 1, Zen can still transcend on turn 0. If Zen draws 2 transcend instants, he can use them, most likely. It's possible that KO just passes the turn, and now Drop in the Ocean, Grain that Tips the Scale, Path Well Traveled are all turned off. If KO doesn't put something in the graveyard, Zen can't pass over. Zen doesn't have anything in his graveyard for Preserved Tradition, so it's very possible that Zen can't transcend turn 0, but it is possible for him to do so. And, of course, the tempo advantage by just smacking aggro decks in the mouth when they can't block on turn 2. So I do think my opponent made some interesting points. I do think it is worth considering that you don't just snap go second when playing the KO Zen matchup, but for my part, I do want to go second as a KO player. So I end up having to block out on turn 1, which includes blocking with a Blood Rush Bellow, which is very unfortunate, but I do need to try to mitigate life loss on turn 0, and I think that the 3 life I preserve by blocking with Blood Rush outweighs any potential gain I would get in damage by playing it on turn 1. I also had to pitch another Blood Rush 2 turns later because I miscounted my Zen's hand size and put them on having an extra Tiger where they instead had a Mauling Key. So I needed to block to prevent some damage. So overall, things are not going great for me. I'm having to throw a lot of my better cards in front of attacks rather than playing them. But we stuck in there, we played the value game. The pitched Blood Rush ended up paying for a Bear Fangs for 10. That made a Might on the back end. So I'm still putting out good damage, and Zen has not had his insane double Art of War pop-off turn. The penultimate turn, from me had an unlucky draw of Blood Rush Bellow from a Wild Ride, followed by the lucky discard of something else. It was a 33% to discard the Blood Rush, and I hit the 66% discard of something else. At this point, my opponent is at 6 health to my 11. They are holding 5 cards with an arsenal, and I have the Blood Rush Bellow, a Run Roughshod, and a floating resource. And I determined that I have 3 choices. I can either run Roughshod for 5, not threaten lethal, and then die to a 6-card hand. I can pitch Blood Rush to attack with Mandible Claw for 3 go again, then follow with Run Roughshod for a total of 8 damage, which my opponent can block with 2 pieces of armor, then kill me with 6 cards. Or I can use my floating resource to play the Blood Rush Bellow, discard my Run Roughshod, and hope that the 2 random cards off the top of my deck are enough to threaten more than 8 points of damage. And what we end up drawing off of that third line, which is what I decide to take, is a blue plus a Run Roughshod, and that is enough to deal 12 points of damage, 5 from Mandible Claw, 7 from the Run Roughshod, and that forces my opponent to block from hand. They give me 4 armor, as well as a blue Bonds of Ancestry, which they needed to banish to their Art of War. They had a Chase the Tail in Arsenal, and by pitching to Zen, they made a Tiger, which they could banish to the Art of War, but now they don't have a Tiger, and they needed the Tiger to play out their line. So they were unable to kill me from 11 points of life, and I cleaned up the game on the next turn to get the win. This one felt very lucky on my part. As my opponent pointed out, they didn't see an Art of War until the last turn of the game, and I don't like that we have to rely on that. I don't like that we have to draw well and Zen has to draw poorly, and that's the win con. And that is a big reason why I think that Zen is the best deck in the format. That if you just take the average draw of Kayo and Zen, Zen is going to win. Kayo has to draw better than Zen, either early Blood Rushes compared to late Art of Wars, or chaining Disruption, and the chain Disruption has to come with Go Again. We can't just send Weakest Link pass, Command and Conquer pass. We have to be sending Wild Ride, Mandible Claw, Weakest Link, Pulping, Send Packing. We have to be able to push damage onto the Zen, rather than just throw Disruption and wait for them to transcend, and wait for them to be able to block with 7 armor and then pop off with 7 cards. But in any event, we beat Zen, we are up 1-0, and we move into our second round against Azalea. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot to say about this game. We do lose, and I don't see how we could have fixed that. We win the die roll, we choose to go first. My Azalea does flip up Skullbone Crosswrap, so I'm like, cool. I don't just lose to balance. My opening hand is 3 reds and a Blood Rush Bellow. So I play Pulping, I pitch Blood Rush Bellow rather than take a 50% chance to discard it. I want to at least push 3 points of damage and make a Might, and I do that. But that Blood Rush Bellow is the only one I saw over the course of the game. And my Azalea proceeds to Fatigue Shot me 3 turns in a row. And if you are not able to put a big Blood Rush turn together, or throw that Wild Ride, Mandible Claw, Command and Conquer, if your turn, like mine were, is just Command and Conquer, discard Wind Up Arsenal, or Send Packing, discard Wind Up Arsenal, Fatigue Shot is 1 for 8, plus all of the laces and buffs sitting on top of it, and shockingly, that's really good. 1 for 8 is an amazing rate. So I was never able to put good damage together, and the Arsenal Disruption that I'm throwing at Azalea is just laughable, because she doesn't need the Arsenal to just load Death Dealer, replace the card that she arsenaled, play 3 laces, and then fire off that Fatigue Shot. That's very doable off of a 4-card hand if she pitches a yellow. So I was never able to push past the disruption, and because I'm never finding that Blood Rush Bellow to really pop off with Sash, I just slowly died until I had no life. And that is what I expect from the Azalea matchup, is if she draws well, and I don't see that spike turn, I do just slowly die. I don't think that this was a high roll. I wouldn't count it as me having terrible luck and Azalea really just spiking. I think the Azalea drew well. I think she drew as well as she needed to, and I think she knew the matchup really well. To see that I have 4 cards, no arsenal, and no agility, Fatigue Shot is going to get a lot more value than Red in the Ledger. So I want to chalk this one up to variance from not having seen that second Blood Rush, but I have to give credit to my opponent. They just knew exactly what to do against Kayo. And they put me in the 1-1 bracket, which paired me against a Levia in round 3. This one, unfortunately, was a loss. I won the die roll and choose to go first. My opponent and I talked about this decision after the game and agreed that as long as Kayo knows what they're doing, it really doesn't matter if they go first or second. I think the advantage is to Kayo to go first because Kayo gets to set a card in Arsenal. But when you do go first, the important thing to do is not give Levia the chance to filter. Because what Levia wants to do is put cards in graveyard. So as soon as Kayo attacks, Levia can block, put cards into the graveyard to fuel her banish effects. And so if you are Kayo and you are going first, regardless of what your hand looks like, really you just want to arsenal and pass. You can discard your wind-ups, maybe throw a pulping if you're feeling good about it, knowing that you are giving Levia the opportunity to block with a card from hand. But more often than not, what you really want to do is just pass. Set up your 5-card hand for next turn, don't give Levia the chance to block, and just move on with your life. And if you are going second in the matchup, you have the understanding that Levia's best option is probably to just play a Swing Big or a Beast Within or Barraging Beatdown Claw, something that will not involve Go Again, something that will not involve a ton of damage, but at the bare minimum, they are getting some cards into their graveyard. So I do think that going first is correct. I had a really strong start in this game. I found a Blood Rush early that let me push a 3-card 13, but unfortunately, Blood Rushes 2 and 3 never showed up until the very end. And while my opponent also had trouble finding Blood Rushes and Art of Wars, long games favor Levia, because while I was able to get her low, I never had that big spike to push her past 13 so that she could not flip into Blasmafet. And at the point she did flip into Blasmafet, she had 11 cards with Blood Debt in her banish zone. So, not only could she grind out this entire game, but when she did eventually flip, she had infinite 5-card hands to close out the game. So, after she flips, I go for the Hail Mary, break Savage Sash, play Wild Ride from Arsenal, play Wild Ride from hand turn to try and get her low enough where she has to start blocking, because with 11 or 10 cards in her Blood Debt, she's just milling herself like crazy. I have a win con of surviving, but I was not able to push her to the point that she needed to start blocking with anything besides a Guardian of the Shadow Realm that she already had in Banish and her Flesh Bag. So it did feel like a close game. I do feel like I maybe could have gotten there if I had more experience in the matchup. Maybe having more reps against Levia would have compensated for not seeing Blood Rush number 2 or 3. But for my limited experience in that matchup, I felt like I was really trying to set up a big spike turn that was my end game, was just Arsenal a Wild Ride, keep Levia off of 4-card hands, and try to pop off, and it just never happened, and that felt really bad. And with a 1-2 record, the 2-2 dream is still alive, but I have to get through a KO mirror match in round 4. This one was a loss. My opponent, Michael, was a really nice guy. We had a really great conversation before, during, and after the game. He's a Daily Fab gameplay viewer. So he was excited to meet me. I was excited to meet him, and we're talking about the Brute matchup. And so I know that he won't mind when I say that he absolutely high-rolled the shit out of me. This was not a close game. I lost the die roll and was told to go first. I didn't see a single blood rush. Michael saw and played 3 blood rushes, 2 cast bones, had 2 reckless swings in his deck, which he never discarded to a discard effect, and also rolled a 6 from his scab skins to fix what would otherwise have been a more or less unplayable blood rush fellow turn. So we don't win those. There is no world in which you win the Kayo mirror when your opponent plays 5 power cards and finds a reckless swing to put in arsenal when you're about to go to 1, and you do none of those things. I do think I maneuvered well for being behind, and if the second cast bones or the third blood rush doesn't happen, that maybe I'm able to pull ahead, maybe able to navigate into a 4 or 5 card blood rush with Sash that can push lethal through Fleshbag. But as it was, I was not given the time to create a situation where I can overcome losing the die roll, playing fewer power cards, and having to use my Fleshbag first. So at the end of the CC rounds of Nationals, we find ourselves 1 and 3, and I considered just dropping, saving some elo, licking my wounds, but honestly, that just doesn't make for exciting content. No one wants to hear about how I did poorly and dropped. You want to hear about my first Nationals event, and especially how a called draft goes, which I had never done. So we knuckle down, we count on draft practice over the last week, compensating for a weak CC performance, and we actually put ourselves into a very good Enigma deck. This is my first call draft. They are run very well. There is LSS staff calling out over a microphone exactly what we need to do. It starts out where we have a minute to take our first pick. Then that slowly ticks down into 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. You are confirming the number of cards in every pack before you pass them. It was all done very well, and it's all done for the purpose of making sure that no one leaves a card in the pack or takes 2 cards or does anything wonky. And we also get little LSS stamped cards at the end of it, so that's pretty cool. So how did we navigate into this absolutely busted Enigma deck? Pack 1, pick 1, we take a red Waxing Spectre out of a fairly weak pack that happened to have 3 assassin cards. 2 of those assassin attacks were red 0 for 3s, and they weren't premium. We didn't see a Desires of Flesh or Pick to Pieces, but we did see a quantity of playable assassin cards, and what that means is we're confident that red Waxing Spectre is the best card in the pack, but we are aware that we are passing assassin. So if we find ourselves in a position where Illusionist is being cut from our right, we have to jump into Ninja. We cannot jump into Assassin because we are confident that we will be very cut in pack 2. Now, close pick to the red Waxing would have been red Nimblism, but because we are shipping these assassin cards, red Nimblism is basically Ninja. And if we are between a pretty medium, maybe B-level Ninja card versus an A-level Illusionist card, we're going to take the Waxing Spectre. Pack 1, pick 2 gives us a similar pack layout. There are 3 assassin attacks. 2 of them are red 0 for 3s, and while not premium, are still good picks for someone who is already locked in new. So our choices are between Drop in the Ocean or Red Biting Breeze. Red Biting Breeze, strictly Ninja. Drop in the Ocean, technically playable by all 3 classes, but Zen and New really don't care about Drop. Drop basically is Illusionist. And so we are deciding if we want to stay open with a B-level Ninja card, or further commit to Illusionist with an A-level Transcend, and I take the Drop in the Ocean. Pack 1 pick 3 shows us a yellow Waxing Spectre and a blue block 3 in the pack. Every class wants bad blue block 3s. This might have been a Wounding Blow or a First Tenant, but a blue block 3 that's playable in all classes. Enigma certainly wants blue block 3s as well. She wants to play 18 to 20 blues, and if everything that isn't a Transcend instant blocks 3, that's fantastic. But my thought is, let's really just reinforce the signal that Illusionist is closed. So we take that yellow Waxing Spectre, still a very playable card on its own. At this point, our draft is red Waxing, yellow Waxing, Drop in the Ocean. And when we look at our Pack 1 pick 4 and see a red Waxing Spectre, we're locked in. We Windmill Slam that. We never look away from Illusionist. And we wind up with an insane deck that I really wish I had taken a picture of. We were talking 3 red Waxing Spectres, 1 red Spectral Manifestations. We have 6 Transcend instants, 3 of which are Drop in the Ocean. We have 19 blues overall, which aside from 6 Transcend instants and 1 Waxing Spectre, are all either 3 blocks or blue Moon Chakra, which can turn into a 3 block when combined with our Transcend cards. We have a full suite of equipment, including Uphold Tradition in the arm slot. This is easily one of the best Enigma decks that we could have possibly drafted. And we're even going to give a shout out to Pack 3 Pick 1, the blue Astral Etchings that I passed so that I could hate draft a red Pick to Pieces, because I knew that I would make playables. And I even knew at this point, there's a really good chance this Astral Etchings comes back. Just based on the quality of Illusionist card and even the quantity that I'm seeing, I might be the only Illusionist at the table. Now it turns out there was a second Illusionist, and they are even a teammate of mine, Casanova. But just based on the pack layout, Cass is not seeing any of these Illusionist cards. Cass has taken 2 red Spectral Manifestations in pack 2 that I didn't see. But all of the equipment that I saw, all of the Waxing Spectres, and even that red Spectral, were all in packs 1 and 3, and none of them got to Cass before they got to me. So while we technically do have 2 Enigmas, my deck is much, much better. So we do end up with the even split of 3-3-2 in our draft pod, 3 News, 3 Zens, 2 Enigmas, but I am easily the best Enigma deck and possibly the best deck overall. First round of draft puts me against one of the News. I lose the die roll, I go second, which is what I want anyway, because what I can do is take some damage turn 1. If my New is smart, they will keep cards in hand and an action point so that I cannot just play instant speed auras. But that means I'm not taking that much damage on turn 0, and I can just really start the bull rolling on my turn 1, which is exactly what I did. I ran a clinic, my deck is cracked, I ended this game with 16 health and 2 chi in my deck, ready to make more. I got by a Pick to Pieces with the intention of rebuilding. That Pick to Pieces with a reaction over the top of my ward did take me down to 16, but I did rebuild and I never lost another point of life. The Enigma New matchup in Limited is already very Enigma favored, and when your deck is just that much better than one of the 3 of News, you're in a really great spot. Second round put me against another New from the pod. This New had been directly to my right, so they knew very well what they were passing me. I win the die roll, I choose to go second, and this was an interesting game because my opponent plays out their entire hand turn 0. They deal 10 points of damage to me, and all the while they're just asking me, like, what's in your hand? What are you doing? Why aren't you blocking? They start with the Mist Blade for 1, which cool. My opening hand is red Waxing Spectre, yellow Waxing Spectre, 2 blue instants. So Alluring Mist Blade comes in, take 1, go to 19. They play blue Double Trouble for 2, go again. 2 cards in hand floating a resource, I say no blocks. They say, okay, here's Blue Hiss. Pump Double Trouble up to 3, go again. Great. Play Slither. Pump Double Trouble up to 5, go again. Banish 2 off the top. I have no reactions. Go to 14, banish 2, I don't know, whatever, off the top of my deck. And they come in with Emissary of Moon for 4 to finish off the turn. We take 4, we go to 10, play out Red Waxing Spectre, Yellow Waxing Spectre, come to my turn. They ask, why didn't you stop any of the damage? And I say, because my understanding of this matchup is, you have just done 10 damage to me. I played 2 Waxing Spectres. I will never take another point of damage in this game, and I never did. I ended the game at 11 because of an homage to Ancestors that actually put me back up a point of life. The best turn my opponent was able to put together was a blue pick to pieces with a reaction into red fact-finding mission, but I was able to block the pick to pieces with a 3 block from hand. The 3 of new card quality really showing in that blue pick to pieces powered by blue reaction turn, and the red fact-finding mission, which while a 2 for 6, and which was able to kill the yellow Waxing Spectre, just wasn't enough to get over prevention and block. I rebuilt that board with a 2nd red Waxing Spectre and a red Haze Shelter, and as it turns out, being able to pitch a single blue to send 4 go again, 4 go again, 4 is very good. So we clean up the new game and we go into our win-in for day 2, which is against one of the 3 of Zens in my pod. Now this one was a loss, and I am really upset about it because I actively threw the game. I actively did my best to punt. Started off with the die roll. I lose the die roll. I'm chosen to go first. I do my best by playing out 2 Waxing Spectres, sending 7 damage, getting some cards out of Zen's deck, and pushing a point of damage over blocks. But for whatever reason, and I want to blame hunger, maybe a little fatigue, I hyperfixate on protecting this red Waxing Spectre. My Zen sent a line that I think was 3 damage, 2 damage, 1 damage, 6. I had blocked a bit so that the 3 damage was blocked. The 2 damage was covered by Battlefront Bastion. There was no 1 point of damage, it was just 6. So I am floating 1 point of prevention. 5 damage is coming at me, and I have 2 Waxing Spectres with all of my equipment, and my hand is a blue and a red Haze Shelter. And the correct line here is to say no blocks. We let both of the Haze Shelters die. We take no damage. We play and attack with the Haze Shelter for 4. We just rebuild and we keep going. We save all of our equipment. And what I did instead was put all of my equipment in front of this 6 power attack. We lose the yellow Haze Shelter to keep the red Haze Shelter. We end up having to pitch reds to attack. And that just puts us into a position where we can no longer protect future auras from tigers, because we can't just flip a Keikoi and prevent the 1 damage from a tiger. We either have to give an entire card from our hand, or we have to let a red Waxing Spectre with Ward 3 die to a 1 power attack. So while I want to blame Hunger and a Long Day, this was a loss, and it was a very bad one. I feel like my deck was of a much higher quality than the deck we were playing against, and if I had piloted the matchup much better, then it would have ended up being a win. And so the takeaway from that is I hadn't had anything to eat that day, I didn't have enough snacks with me, and I usually prepare better than that, and just felt like I didn't need to, and obviously that isn't the case. So while we would like to have a better takeaway about maybe gameplay or tightening up, optimizing our lines, we also have to pay attention to those external factors that just say, you were hungry and you didn't think well. So we end Nationals Day 1 with a 3-4 record. That is not good enough to put us into Day 2. Day 2 requires a record of X3 or better. So we walk away from nationals, we go play an side event, pick up a Flick Flack promo, 240 prize wall tickets. I do drop out of that sealed event, although I do think my deck was pretty good. It was just getting late in the day. I wanted to go meet up with friends for dinner, and I'm still very irritated by how I had thrown that Zen game. So was overall not in a great mental state going into Saturday, where I was going to sign up for and play the calling. And that is the story for tomorrow. We'll get into the calling, how it went, how day 2 of the calling went. Spoilers. But overall, it went a lot better. Nationals takeaways. The testing house was great, learned a lot about draft. I do not think that I would have been able to navigate that draft into a cracked Enigma deck had I not been practicing all week, and even for the weeks prior through online drafts and paper drafts with locals. CC, I think I played as well as I could have in the Azalea and the Kayo losses. The Levia loss was probably winnable if I had more reps. But overall, I think that Kayo performed as well as it could have, given the weak draws that I was getting. I don't think I played particularly poorly. I think I played very well. And despite being frustrated at that 3-4 record, it does leave me fired up to try a lot harder for my next nationals event, my next big events. I think I did well, and I think I could do a lot better. So, obviously there will be a part 2 of this weekend. That calling recap will come tomorrow. So I will just leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope maybe you learned something in preparation for your country's nationals. If so, be sure to assault and batter that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It is the best free way to support me. Check me out on X. If you'd like to give a little more, check out my Patreon. These links are in the video description below. And until tomorrow, take care.